and welcome to Illegal Moves with Liz and Taylor.
Where we're covering sports from the field to the court. Liz, what's up?
I heard some things are going down at University of Michigan, but
Yeah, they've had an interesting week. They've had an interesting week, interesting month, honestly, interesting year. And they can't seem to get their stuff right. And honestly, funny enough, I mean, we were sitting down ready to record this 2 hours ago. And news broke literally like 2 hours ago. And so we kind of paused what we were going to do, regrouped a little bit, read some more, because this story, honestly, this is one of those stories that's going to get fascinating by the day, kind of until it's over.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be, and there's so many moving parts in this. And so this one's going to be a little bit different from our first episode, which
Yes.
I feel like was very legal heavy. And, this one is definitely going to be a lot of talk about more of the sports side of things. There's some legal stuff to talk about, of course. Why would it be on the podcast otherwise? But
obviously,
I am very excited to talk about it. But I think since you're the sports guy, this episode, I think you should give the facts and the stats. Start it off. Kick us off.
Absolutely, would love to. So we are talking about the University of Michigan Wolverines football team. That's where our focus goes in. So just a few things about them. They are the winningest program in NCAA history. They have 999 wins. Literally, they're going for their 1,000th win tomorrow. With all this going on, they'll be the first team ever to reach 1,000 wins. So 999.
Like the first team within this conference, or ever?
Ever. No NCAA team has ever reached 1,000 wins. And this is going on. That's a part of it too. Yeah. So no big deal. They are 999, 353, and 36. Back when football used to have ties, we don't do that shit anymore. They have 11 claimed national titles, the last being in 97. They have played in 50 bowl games, 21 and 29 in those games. 2 playoff appearances the last 2 seasons. 3 Heisman winners, 87 consensus All-Americans. They also, here's a fun fact for you, have the largest stadium in the United States, the Western Hemisphere, and the 3rd largest in the world. Michigan Stadium, aka the Big House, can seat just over 107,000 people.
Good
so
God.
I think I am comfortable saying Michigan football is kind of a big deal.
It sounds like I'm kind of a big deal. It's like the first thing I thought. But that's it. Really, this is wild to hear about, because obviously we've been talking about this. I've been following what's been going on in the news, but I don't really know any. I've told you before, I'm not big on football. I'm very much a big fan of basketball. With college football, all I know is support the Memphis Tigers, because I am a Tiger. That's about all I got.
They took your money. Yes, I'll cheer for you. Fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So this is interesting, but switching gears from that, so we have established that Michigan is a huge deal. Let's talk about the coach.
Yeah, so their coach is Jim Harbaugh. He's been there since 2015. I'm a Chicago Bears fan. Unfortunately, some days, Jim Harbaugh, former Chicago Bear, really came to the program after a stint in the NFL. It was a very, kind of a huge get, honestly, for Michigan to get a guy like that. And he is 80 and 25 since he took over. Now, I'm going to point out in that record, because I found it interesting, pre these allegations, which we'll get into, he was 49 and 22. Not a bad record by any means. It's a winning record.
Yeah, but that...
However, post these allegations, which started in alleged to have started in 2021, he is 29 and 3 with 2 college football playoff appearances. And I'd like to point out that their defense, the last 3 years, including this year, were ranked 8th, 7th, and now 1st. They own the best defense in college football. I'm not exactly sure which metric they're using. I think it may be DVOA. which we won't get into, Liz, don't worry. But they are allowing, I believe, the fewest points per game in college football right now, and that is pretty unbelievable. You could say, and guys, we're not going to get into it. You could talk about their schedule and how maybe it hasn't been as difficult, although I think they played some okay teams that have maybe underperformed.
That. What
that's a bigger college football issue almost, and level of competition, which the new Big Ten, which happens next year, you're going to be playing some pretty good teams all throughout the season, but that's maybe another story for another day or another time. But suffice to say, Michigan's a good football team. They're a real good football team. They can do the football thing better than most.
Yeah, that has become very clear.
Yes.
And I could see, well, also why this is such a big deal. And so, like, getting into what's been going on that is sports, and we're getting into quasi-legal stuff here, is the drama, which started on August 23rd, where Coach Harbaugh got a 3-game suspension for sign stealing, for recruiting violations.
Yes.
The second time he was dinged was on November 10th, so that was the most recent, and that was for sign stealing. So going back to August 23rd, Taylor, is that the one that you said where it was a self-imposed?
Yes. So back in January, the NCAA announced that they had launched an investigation into Jim Harbaugh and the University of Michigan for recruiting violations, specifically during a COVID dead period where you weren't allowed to go recruit. That he, funny enough, took some recruits to a restaurant and bought him a burger. So it's kind of, they're like, what's all this beef about? Has kind of been the joke about it. But
to be clear, recruiting violations as far as the NCAA rules.
So there are just various things of like who you can talk to and when you can talk to them.
Or no, I'm saying it's the NCAA.
Oh, yes. Okay. This is the NCAA. This is an NCAA rule.
Because when we get into the legally messy stuff, that's going to be important. So, yeah.
So this is... Yes, he's violating it. Now, funny enough, what they're upset about is the fact that he did not cooperate with their investigation into this particular thing. So it appears that it's a level 2 violation, but they're saying that it could potentially be a level 1 violation because of what he did. And actually, just so folks can see, I'm going to actually show you. So this is from the NCAA. They're level 1, they're level 2, and they're level 3 violations, right? So 1 being the worst, 3 being not so good. And just, I want everyone to keep in mind two really important things. So in level 1, the lack of institutional control, and in level 2, the failure to monitor. Those are really, really important, and are going to come up later when we go to this. So that is actually, that investigation is still ongoing. The self-imposed thing was to kind of, you'll see teams do this. They want to, I don't know, placate is probably the right word, the NCAA, and say, hey, you know what? You're right. We really shouldn't have done that. But look, we're gonna suspend our coach because of what he did for the first 3 games, to hopefully stop the NCAA from wanting to impose further sanctions and go, okay, well, yes, you are guilty of this, but kind of time served deal, right? We're not going to levy any further penalties on you. Now, this particular suspension, which is the last 3 games of the season, including last week, this week, and next week, is from the Big Ten, not the NCAA. And I think that's very important clarification to make. This is a Big Ten suspension.
So that's where we are. But I wanted to ask you, because we talked about, so I mentioned November 10th. I mentioned it was for sign stealing. For all of the novices out there like myself, what in the hell is sign stealing, Taylor?
So sign stealing. So in college football, one of the very big different, that makes all the sense in the world. things between that and the NFL is how plays are called to the players on the field, right? So in the NFL, you have in-helmet communication. So me as the coach, I click on, right? I'm calling into the quarterback, whatever the play may be. And then the quarterback calls it to the team. In college football, that does not happen. They do not have the in-helmet communication. So to call a play, they're either going to give a number, like you'll see like a wristband on players, right? They'll like look, everybody's looking down, right? That's because they've called a number, okay? Or they may give certain hand gestures, right? Kind of coming across, hitting here, right? And they each have their own meaning of what that play may be, what route to run, what defense to run on both sides of the ball. You'll also see pictures. So if you're ever watching a game and you see like random pictures on the sideline, you'll see like, Donald Duck and a tire, and all those mean something to the players on the field.
It's like a code, like a coded language or something like that.
It's a coded language. So to try to decipher that, teams could try to steal signs. Now, here is where we're going to go through it. I'm going to give you I'm going to give you some legal jargon, Liz. From what the NCAA deems illegal. So, bylaw 11.6.1 states that off-campus, in-person scouting of future opponents in the same season is prohibited, except as provided in bylaws 11.6.1.1 and 11.6.1.2. Which deal with the same event at a same site or conference or NCAA championships, but we won't have to really get into that too much. So, what they are alleged of doing is having someone physically go to a stadium where two teams are playing, and they are not one of those teams, and watch the sideline, film the sideline, to watch them and what they're doing and how it correlates to the field, and then going back and using that to try to decipher what the team is doing.
So they're going to pull a Toros when they went to the Clovers, and Big Red was recording all of their cheer routines, and Gabrielle Union was like, bitch.
Exactly. It's honestly, it's the exact same thing.
I don't even care how stereotypical it is that I just compared that to like a bubblegum cheerleading movie.
No, I think it's great. And I think that essentially, like, really, that is what happened. And it's alleged, and it is alleged right now, the NCAA is investigating that this particular defensive assistant, his name is Connor Stallions, who has since resigned from his position on the Michigan staff, that he was going to various stadiums. He had a network of people who would go to these stadiums to look at future opponents they had, potentially even possible future college football playoff opponents, which is crazy. Also, one of the weird ones, and I really hope they figure this out in the investigation, he is also being accused of being on the sideline at the Central Michigan State game, wearing Central Michigan gear with credentials to be on the sideline with like a hat and sunglasses on for a night game. Okay, you're not Dion. You don't get to wear sunglasses at night.
This is like some Looney Tunes shit.
And now a lot of people are going to say, and this, I'm sure if we get some sports folks, we'll see this comment. Everybody steals signs. Okay,
and that's what I was going to ask. Like, if so it's one thing to steal credentials and all that. Yes. And I'm sure you'll get into that. But I would assume that a certain amount of sign stealing is okay, because what if you were just playing against a team and watched them and you could figure out and decipher their signs from just picking up patterns?
Right. And scouting of teams is a thing that everyone does. You're gonna watch game film on your opponent to see what they're doing. That's fine. You can basically every team has there's a company that provides they call it the All 22. So it is a camera. They'll show like the time, score, down and distance, and then they'll show the play like you were up in the press box, right? Like you were watching down on the field. You can get that. Anybody can watch All 22. You're going to watch game film because that's how you scout. That is fine. Those films, maybe you would see something on the sideline, but you actually see a lot of teams if you're watching a game and you see a big bed sheet go up, and you're like, what the hell is going on? They're actually covering up their coaches. So, like, imagine the camera's up behind me, big bed sheet goes up, I give my sign, and then it comes down, right? So you can't see it.
Okay.
So even if you had the film, you're not necessarily going to see what's happening on the sideline. This is being on the other side of the field and recording something on your own. That is not allowed. Now, you can be standing on the sideline and looking over and going, hey, coach, every time he does that thing, the ex receiver runs a go route. Like, I think that's what that means. Okay, well, I guess we'll look out for it, right? Now, risk reward there. If they change their sign, you're screwed, right? So that is fine. Watching game film, doing all that, scouting an opponent that way, totally fine. It's this off-campus, in-person scouting that is the issue. That is the thing. That is the big, to do for this whole thing. And that they were, recording. And so as well, the rulebook states, quote, any attempt to record, either through audio or video means, any signals given by an opposing player, coach, or other team personnel is prohibited. Right?
Okay.
So that is what we are talking about here. We are talking
that's
about
pretty clearly stated in the rules. Like it's
yeah, and this is not a new rule. Just so everyone here knows, this was effective for the 1994 season. That is when this was done. The reason that this exists is because the NCAA felt that certain teams didn't have the budget or capability to go scout teams. So to make it a level playing field, no one gets to do it. Because very easily, there are teams that could go advanced scout, no problem. They have the money, they have the capability, they could do it.
Especially if you're the winningest team
out
there with the largest stadium in the Western Hemisphere.
Exactly. Where a team like Samford, right? Like, they're not going to be able to do that. Like, or hell, there was now I can't remember exactly. There was a school, they were watching game film in their showers because they didn't have a big enough room for a game film. Now they've actually got some money donated and they're going to build a game film room. But yeah. Michigan is not that.
And I feel like a lot of people will say, like, oh, well, if they're so good and they are winners and et cetera, and they have the money, shouldn't they be allowed to do what they want? It's not their fault. They're so successful, blah, blah, blah. Why does everybody else have to lower themselves? To which my response would be, I know this is going to probably make some asses itch, but really it's not about football or sports. This is college. Like, these are colleges and universities. These are students.
Yeah.
These are students coming in. Really, what the main mission of any college university should be. Does not always pan out that way, especially with all the stuff we're going to talk about in a minute about the legal chokehold that sports has on America. It should be about educating, elevating these students, giving them equal opportunity, giving them a chance so that they can, set themselves up for success long-term in life. Because, Taylor, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but what percentage of college football athletes will actually go to the NFL?
Oh, Lord. It's like, so let's see. Well, let's put it this way. There are 133 schools that play college football. There are, let's say there's like about 70. I think they can have about 70 players. Let's say there's roughly 9,300 players. So let's say there's roughly somewhere between probably 9 and 10,000 college football players. There are on rosters, not including practice squad, all that, 1,664 players in the NFL.
Jesus, that's what I'm talking about. Like, at the end of the day, the way that sports is so integrated into these colleges and universities is how they get a ton of their money that's really supposed to help them invest in their academics in the first place. Like, we know that there's colleges who depend on running based on what they get from the sports that they're involved in, right? Like,
absolutely,
that's just the way it is. And that helps not just with their athletic department, but a lot of times all of their facilities, bringing in their students. Like a lot of these, these students come in, and yes, they're on like a sports scholarship or something, and yes, they're there to play sports. And it'd be awesome if they're one of the small percentage of people to go pro, these college football players to go into the NFL. But the vast majority of them, they're going to have to go into the world, like have a career, have a job, all that. And so it makes sense to me that they would have this rule in place, like you said, to level the playing field, because at the end of the day, we are dealing with colleges and universities and students, especially those who are just fresh out of high school.
And I think you're right. And it's one of those issues of there is so much money involved in it that people forget this is an amateur sport.
Yeah.
I know there's NIL and stuff, but this is not a professional league. Yes, I know it looks like it. Hell, you go to a high school football game in Texas. There's high schools in Texas that have larger stadiums than some colleges, right? It's just this like wild inherent way of life now, it seems. And then
you see parents losing their shit at like a pee-wee football league game.
Oh yeah.
Throwing a fit, screaming, cussing, stomping, throwing up, crying, sliding down the wall over some like 6-year-olds playing football. So
now now take that, and obviously the amount of money you can bet right on college football, and just the wild. I mean, again, these massive stadiums, right? Massive fan bases, massive TV rights deals. We have the super conferences that are starting now. I mean, it is like the NCAA and the Big Ten can say all they want. It's all about student athletes. Honestly, it's hard sometimes when you know how much money is being generated by these kids. It's why NIL has become so popular and
we'll do a whole episode on NIL because
it will be a whole episode. It'll be more than one episode, honestly, probably just with all the various things. But to get back to it and to get back to Michigan, it seems pretty cut and dry that if they did this thing, then yes, they broke a rule, and they're going to be penalized for it. Now that's the NCAA, and if you don't know, the NCAA takes forever to do investigations. They still haven't levied, their ruling on this Harbaugh thing, a thing that happened like in 2020 or 21. They talked about it this year. We're still waiting on that. So it's not going to happen.
So it sounds like they have that in common with the traditional legal system we have in the United States, because I believe the average time it takes to resolve a lawsuit is like 7 years or something. Yeah. So
okay, now and I don't know what its real world counterpart would be, but the Big Ten kind of has some different rules they get to play by. And you mentioned that suspension that was from the Big Ten. The Big Ten levied the suspension, not the NCAA, because they are saying that Jim Harbaugh or the University of Michigan, right, violated the sportsmanship policy of the Big Ten.
So just to be clear with our listeners, the August 23rd violation, the recruiting violations, that was the self-imposed 3-game suspension from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
But the November 10th suspension for sign stealing, right?
Correct.
So that came from the Big Ten. So that's what we're talking about. So we've got 3 entities that I just want to go and be clear about. You've got Michigan, which is the school. Okay. You've then got Big Ten and then NCAA. And the way I think about it legally is and that's an order of authority, right? So NCAA is at the top. Then you've got Big Ten. Then you've got the University of Michigan, which is a member of Big Ten. So Taylor, if you want, I can go ahead and talk about all the wonderful things I found out about Big Ten.
Oh no, absolutely, because this is and also I want to say, and one of the reasons and this, what I enjoy about this is a weird legal thing where technically Michigan didn't break any laws, right? Like nothing they're doing, like nothing in the world of law, in the real world out here, they didn't break any rules. But they broke a nonprofit organization's bylaws, right, in relation to that. And I find it absolutely fascinating. So let's get into what the Big Ten thinks about not being a good sportsman.
So for those who don't know, the Big Ten is the oldest Division I collegiate athletic conference. The conference being the universities and colleges that are members of the Big Ten. They are members of them. And so the best way that I can break this down is reading through all of this and how they're set up is very much like business law, a corporation. I think that is the best way to describe them. Do want to point out that I am by no means an expert in business law. The Shelby County mayor, who was my professor, can attest to the fact that I did okay.
I just, how did she do? Steve Moore, quote, okay.
Yeah, sorry, don't mean to just shout you out randomly Mayor Lee Harris, but he can confirm that I did okay. Didn't just knock it out the park.
Yeah.
Not a touchdown. So, anyways, but I know enough to look at this and see how their rules are set up, how their organization is set up, and go, okay, this reminds me of my BizWorks law class. That's exactly what it reminds me of. And that got me and Taylor talking about how these are basically money-making corporations. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. It's about making money. And
yes,
the Big Ten, they all have, like, if you go to I believe it's page 47 of their Big Ten handbook, it lays out their entire legislative authority. Does not mean like, the state of Michigan passing a law or the, Congress passing a law, not that kind of legislative authority. The legislative authority is in the rulemaking authority within their organization, how they're able to vote, all of the bylaws that Taylor mentioned there. And so you've got, again, Michigan, which they have their university policies when it comes to their athletics. And again, Big Ten this is all just for the athletics, not the university as a whole. So you've got University of Michigan. They have their policies. Those policies cannot override Big Ten, and Big Ten cannot override NCAA. And so the best way to describe that is it's like United States Congress, state legislature, and then like local city council. So that is kind of how I would want people to think about it in their minds when they're thinking about who has the most authority and how this flows. So in Big Ten, the rule that is in play in here is Rule 32. And it says the Big Ten can either initiate an investigation or the NCAA can initiate an investigation if they find there's been a violation. And then Big Ten doesn't have the authority to discipline anyone who's violated any of the NCAA rules until the NCAA has finished its investigation. And in Rule 32.2c, when the NCAA has initiated the investigation, the conference can add on more penalties only after cooperating with the NCAA investigation and after, whatever action the NCAA has already taken. So this violation that happened on November 10th and the suspension for the 3 games and why Michigan decided to challenge that and said the Big Ten, they went to court, an actual court, how they got into switching over from this like quasi-legal, not really legal kind of institution corporate thing and got into a courtroom is basically contract law. That's what it is. They're going to say that there's a breach of contract. There's a breach of their agreement. That's what it comes down to. That sort of business law concept so not really anything special. It's not like the NCAA is going to court on some special authority because they have some special power. It's just like with anybody else if there's a contract violation there, because this is all what they're
Michigan
to.
Michigan tried to basically the president of the university talked to Tony Petitti, who's the commissioner of the Big Ten, and said, look, I really don't think you should do anything, because if you do, it'll set a bad precedent. And he was like, well, and there's a lot of, there was a lot of pressure from every other Big Ten school, which, by the way, the one thing the Big Ten can't do is count There are 14 teams in the Big Ten, and as of next year, there'll be 18. So
okay, to be fair, they're talking about the 10 schools that started it all.
Yeah,
I
know. It's just it's a
but
thing.
We're
It's
gonna dig at
just
them
a ticky tack. It's just a ticky tack thing. But they tried to say, hey, like you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. And I will say, a little shitty of the Big Ten. They announced this last week, while Michigan was on the plane flying to their game to Penn State. I do. That's not very cool. So they found out literally like on the plane, but they were on top of this because they had it was like a 20-page document that they brought to whatever the court was in Michigan. And I found it weird because I didn't know, and maybe you can help me with this. Like, so they were filing, a temporary restraining order, I guess, against the Big Ten for being able to try to suspend him.
Yep. That's what it was. And so I don't know exactly because they settled. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Yes.
Of how it ended. So I don't know exactly what the arguments would have been in the end, but this is what I'm guessing based on looking at the rules, understanding the contracts, the contract law implications, and how they're set up. My guess is Big Ten said, we're bringing this 3-game suspension, which, by the way, was like the remaining regular season games. So, of course, that's got everybody in a tizzy.
Very much so, especially with the game next week.
Yes.
The game.
And they said, we're doing this under the sportsman-like conduct policy, right? But my guess is what Michigan is going to come back with. And why Michigan is bringing this, just to be clear, it's Harbaugh, right? Because it's against Harbaugh. Why Michigan is bringing this is Harbaugh is essentially an agent of the University of Michigan. He works for them. He represents them. So that's why you see Michigan bringing this on his behalf, just to explain that. So Michigan is likely going to argue, no, this falls under that Rule 32 that I just laid out that says you can't give any sort of penalty until the NCAA has finished its investigation and already decided its action, and it hasn't done that. So you have to wait. And so I don't know how that would have turned out. It would have been interesting to see, but we're not going to find that out because they settled. And that happened, today, Taylor, right?
Well, so that happened late yesterday. Now, what here's, and then, so basically, everyone know, we recorded our first episode last week. I know you're not supposed to break the when it was recorded. It was recorded last Friday. And so last Friday, we get out with the episode. I'm like, look, we 100% are doing Harbaugh, Michigan next week because this ruling came down from the Big Ten. They were trying to file a temporary restraining order to get him to coach last Saturday against Penn State. They didn't go through, and it was all set up for today, which is Friday, November 17th. And later yesterday, a story comes out that Jim Harbaugh is accepting his suspension. Michigan is dropping their court case, and the Big Ten is ending their investigation. All this happened real quick, which I was like, what the hell? And they filed it. Is it without prejudice? Is that correct, Liz?
They filed it with prejudice.
Or with prejudice,
so meaning they're not going to, or the court dismissed it with prejudice is what it means, and so that means that they cannot come back and file that same claim.
Yeah,
so that's done.
Yeah,
without prejudice is what happens when the court says we're dismissing it for now, but if new facts, new whatever, you fix your pleadings, blah, 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 you can come back.
And throughout, I think also, if you haven't been following this, one of the big things during this whole thing has been how adamant the University of Michigan and Jim Harbaugh has been that, we're going to fight this, and this is wrong, and we believe in what it means to be a Michigan man. And you had the team last week after, so Harbaugh gets suspended, all the players were tweeting, bet. And now they went out last week and beat Penn State. Great, you got the win. That's awesome. But everyone was taking it. I mean, now there's been a total shift of how they are treating this case. Because the tone was very we're going to fight this. Now it's, hey, we'll work with you. What do you want to know? Like, that's what it feels like to me. Like, it's just a complete shift. And I had mentioned we were going to record this podcast, and then some news came out. So this was as of 7:00 Eastern today. Breaking on ESPN. Pete Thamel, one of the writers, has been really covering this. Definitely, kind of follow what he's doing to really keep up with this. But apparently, Liz, Michigan found out some stuff in regards to this investigation. So just gonna share a little bit of this. So obviously they were preparing this week to challenge the Big Ten's right to suspend the coach. And it all backed up. And then they also today fired their linebackers coach, Chris Partridge. Now, sources are saying that Michigan obtained some evidence this week suggesting that a university booster helped fund the impermissible sign-stealing operation run by former staff member Connor Stalions. They also received evidence that suggested that Partridge was tampering with the ongoing investigation. So we were talking about money.
Yes.
And boosters, so in the NFL, right, the money comes from the owner and their revenue, and the NFL revenue shares also. College football does rely heavily on boosters. It's a way for them to get money. If you saw, Jimbo Fisher was fired by Texas. This is actually quite funny. Jimbo Fisher was fired by Texas A&M. He had a fully guaranteed contract, so they owed him $76 million. They owe him $76 million. Doesn't matter. Apparently at the game, during halftime, they presented a check to the school for $160 million, like these boosters did. And apparently that included the money they were giving the school to say, yeah, it's okay to fire Jimbo Fisher.
Holy crap.
That's what they're saying. If that's true, that's great. That is wonderful.
Gangsterous move.
Right. So, what they're, if it's, because here's the thing too, right? It would probably be hard for them to say Jim Harbaugh knew about it. There would have to be, I guess you would have to find evidence of emails probably of yes, go to Ohio State this weekend and film their sideline, sign Jim Harbaugh, right? He's not going to do that. Which is where that lack of institutional control and lack of monitoring comes into play, because if they can't prove that he was part of it, it'll probably say, hey, that's a lack of monitoring. That's a level 2 violation, which obviously is not as bad. But now you have a booster. Who did the booster go to? Who was he? Did he find this Connor guy? I was like, hey, Connor, you seem like a nice young man. You want to do this thing? That's insane to me. This whole thing. This whole thing is insane.
It's messy, and then
yeah. So they're saying the university leadership, they're shifting their tone, right? Because I think at this point they realize that there seems to be some mounting evidence here, and that honestly at this point, and it was we talked about the self-imposed suspension earlier this year. Self-imposed sanctions from teams are a way of them avoiding further penalty. So there's wind of this coach that he was apparently going to players and other members of the staff discussing the ongoing investigation, which is a no-no.
And that was Partridge, right?
That was Partridge.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't do that. Also a source saying he tried to obstruct the investigation by destroying potential evidence.
Right.
So Yahoo Sports first reported that. So the university, quote, received evidence that this is in the termination letter to Partridge. Quote, received evidence that you have failed to abide by the university directive not to discuss an ongoing NCAA investigation with anyone associated with Michigan football or others, and as a result has determined you have failed to satisfactorily perform your duties. End quote.
And so what I told Taylor that's interesting there is I would love to look at these employment contracts, because I'm just wondering what they've got to have some sort of detail in there, right, about fireable offenses. What do they have that they can take this action? Because when we looked up the violations and the level of violations, it doesn't say that any of them lead to an automatic termination. It doesn't say recommended termination. It doesn't say after so many violations, this, that, and the third. There's nothing there. Really, to be honest with you, when I saw the levels and Taylor telling me what's worse and what's not as bad meant nothing to me, because I saw absolutely no penalties outlined. There was just nothing. It seems to be very broad.
So that's the thing too. So it is not, and I don't. You can probably speak on this. There is a law, right? A state has a law that says you can't steal a car, and I don't know. There's probably corresponding levels of penalties for that. Whether it's jail time or fines or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. There are violations that you can commit. There are no set penalties for those violations. That could be, they could take scholarships away. They could say you're not allowed to play in a bowl game this year, which costs the school revenue. You could say your head coach is suspended, but there is no black and white. You did this. This is what you get. That doesn't happen.
Right.
And that is part of where the self-imposed sanctions come from. There's also the show cause side of things, where a school...
Yeah, you mentioned that on the phone.
Yeah,
and that was interesting.
Yeah, so we were talking about Chris Partridge not being a member of the University of Michigan anymore. Well, how could the NCAA further investigate him or kind of force him to be a part of the investigation? Because again,
yes,
they're not the law. They're not
right.
They
and
don't
I asked
have
Taylor this specifically because I was like, wait, but did they fire him to get him out of the way, to cover up something else? Because maybe they did that so then he no longer is bound to give any more information. But then Taylor is telling me about this.
So the show cause deal. So the way it works is so Jeremy Pruitt is the most recent example. He was the head coach of the University of Tennessee. He was fired. He has a 6-year show cause penalty imposed upon him. So essentially, any school that would want to hire him in a position would have to either prove to the NCAA that they should be okay with us. You should be okay with us hiring him because we have these things in place. These won't happen again, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Otherwise, wherever that coach goes, there are penalties that the school could face in relation to that person's part. So I have Jeremy Pruitt has a recruiting violation at Tennessee. Colorado State hires him. Well, Colorado State is now potentially going to have sanctions imposed upon them because of something he did at another school. So could be a thing where this guy, potentially if he was, now there's no evidence right now to say he was part of the sign stealing portion, but if he were, potentially the NCAA could say, all right, well, either you're going to cooperate with us or we're going to impose sanctions upon you specifically, and you won't be able to coach for another school for X amount of years. So there is some power that they have, even though technically he's no longer an employee of one of their schools. They do still have some power in how they can, potentially hamstring his future.
And that makes a lot of sense of how they're going to, they try to wield that, because this gets into how one-sided this can become when it comes to the NCAA and the authority that they have. So like we said, they're not the law. And they're very much not the law, because in 1988, in the Supreme Court case of NCAA versus Tarkanian, the Supreme Court determined that the NCAA is not a state actor, even though about 50% of their members are sponsored by state governments. What that means is, like, University of Michigan is a public university. That means they're a state actor. That's why they're bound by things like Title IX. That's why they're bound by federal law. That's why, that's very important when it comes to violating due process rights, you know? And because the Supreme Court said that the NCAA is not a state actor for constitutional law purposes, they're not subject to due process. Due process meaning, the right that you have to be heard when your rights have been violated. And so, it all comes down to the hearing and appeals process that the NCAA blesses these employees and these members with and allow them to have, because under the law they're not required to actually give them any sort of due process. So the Supreme Court said that just because a state actor chooses to adopt the NCAA rules, that doesn't make them a state actor. Now, what's interesting there is that the Supreme Court didn't address the fact that it's not just adopting the NCAA's rules. They can't be a part of this whole athletic scheme unless they adopt the rules, which also significantly hampers funding and things like that come to their colleges and universities. And so it's kind of like a catch-22. It's like, well, they're choosing to adopt the NCAA rules, but it's like, are they really choosing though? They don't really have a choice. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what can you do?
Right.
So that's interesting there, to kind of give, again, like a little bit of a sneak peek, though, into when we get into our NIL episodes. In 2021, the Supreme Court did rule that the NCAA is not exempt from antitrust laws, though. So, that means that they are not exempt from interfering with a fair market, monopolies, that sort of thing, if you've ever heard anything like that. And it's specifically from... Section 1 of the Sherman Antitrust Act, which my friend Julita will be very excited to hear about because she loves antitrust law. Maybe I need to get her on for that.
Ooh,
those episodes. She's an attorney and she's big into antitrust law. I might need to Julita. This is my official request that maybe you come on for one of these NIL episodes.
I've got questions. I want answers.
We want some answers. But they basically said, the Supreme Court said that the rules limiting education-related compensation that colleges and universities can provide student athletes violate the Sherman Antitrust Act. So that's where NIL comes into it. So there is some oversight of the NCAA, a little bit, in some things. But when it comes to, everything that governs the coaches, the players, their contracts, how all of this works, the creation of conferences like Big Ten and their bylaws and their membership and all of that, it's really coming down to just business law, contract law. There's not really that much to make them change what they want to do. And I find that as a lawyer, just from the legal side, very interesting. A little hard for me to conceptualize sometimes because, like we said, there is just this mixture of state actors, non-state actors. We're seeing state legislatures now make laws mostly regarding like NIL and like everything that's coming from that and everything with the Supreme Court. Anyways, just to throw that out there about just the legal side of things, that is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
That they have all of this power, all of this money that they generate, which is, again, I'm bringing up the student athletes. That's what it comes down to. That's who makes this, right? None of this would exist without the student athletes. To have so little oversight from an outside body, from an actual legal body, one that is recognized by the United States Constitution, right? To have so little oversight when you're dealing with these student athletes, with the NCAA can just completely change their lives 150%. And it's just, it's wild to me to try to figure out. And I see why things like NIL are coming out, why there's now been challenges to give more protections and more rights when it comes to the students. But man, this has been an interesting deep dive, and I know that this specifically affects a coach. I know that this is specifically about Harbaugh. I know that this deals with, like, yes, we see that there were rules violated and all of that. But once you do this deeper dive and really peel back the layers, you start to realize, damn, this has set up something crazy. Like,
yeah, and I think I was having a conversation today. I was saying, we're going to talk about Michigan stuff and NCAA, and the guy I was talking to said, man, NCAA is not going to exist in a couple of years. And that's an honest thought from some sports fans with these super conferences, right? The Big Ten is moving to 18 teams, right? You have the SEC, already the best, the best, right? The most powerful conference in the country, adding Oklahoma and Texas to blue bloods in the football world, and that potentially, right, those conferences could come together and say, hey, we don't need the NCAA. What do we need the NCAA for?
That is a great point, because as I was reading through their bylaws, as I was thinking about that structure that I laid out, that top down when it comes from NCAA down to the university, I was sitting here wondering, what does the Big Ten need the NCAA for at this point? And also, what if they start dropping schools?
Big Ten, absolutely. I mean, Big Ten can negotiate their own TV contracts.
Because it's all contract law.
It's contracts. So there is and it is and it's a thing that college football is never going to be the same. It has changed over the last couple of years. NIL is a part of it. These super conferences that are going to happen. College football, as we know it, is that we knew it. It's gone. It's dead, and we're moving into a very different thing where, we are talking about athletes who have now, right? Everybody is a good athlete. Everybody grew up playing. Everybody's been training, where in years past, it was like, man, that guy's really good. It's like, yeah, because he was the only athletic one. Everybody else just like, dicked around, whatever. But like now because there is so much money, again, we're back to money involved. You go look up any top school's weight room training facility, right? Go look at it, right? Look at what they're doing. Look at the services they're providing. Now, they are trying to set these kids up for, future success, and that's great, but it's also their success that they're focused on as well. And if it gets to a point where they feel like the NCAA is inhibiting them, I could see them basically creating their own new governing body and leaving the NCAA in the dust.
Yeah, I could totally see that happening, because the more I dug into it, I was like, what is tying this together besides a contract and a good old boys club? I mean, really, quite honestly. Yeah. I wasn't familiar before we started talking about this, when we started just talking casually about what was going on with the University of Michigan, and I wanted to do a deeper look into it and see what sort of legal teeth they really had in there, especially just knowing what I know about universities. I know that, a university can be held liable for a public college university could be held liable for free speech violations, all kinds of constitutional law violations. It is a little different because the Supreme Court has made distinctions when it comes to different educational settings, but even in public high schools, there's free speech rights. Again, that First Amendment law is a whole can of worms, y'all, that I'm not even going to get into. So just know that I'm painting this with the broadest of brushes. There's so many nitpicky things. All I'm saying is that it's not equal, but there is some presence of those constitutional protections, and beyond not violating Title IX and, things like that. When it comes down to all of this, the Big Ten and these universities, they can kind of do whatever they want to do, as long as as long as it's a valid contract. Which I mentioned briefly to you. I know that I wonder, and I kind of struggle with this too, about how some of these contracts with these student athletes are considered unconscionable, which is a whole legal term that basically means like that contract ain't no good because of lack of bargaining power, because the other party, the many different factors. Yeah. And I honestly just triggered myself, because unconscionability was the topic for my first year of law school legal methods course, and I swear to God, we all wanted to die after that. But it is a real thing. It is a real concern, and so I'm just baffled at how little oversight there is for these students.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the game does have to be played on the field. If you have an unfair advantage because you're doing some unfair stuff, you should probably get in trouble for it. So we'll probably have an update in like 3 years when the NCAA finally finishes their investigation. But no, this is and with everything that we're going to talk, all our topics on this podcast. If there's updates and things, we will give those quick updates. Especially with this case. I mean, you've got obviously he's suspended for the rest of the regular season, which includes this tomorrow when they play at Maryland, and next week when Ohio State comes to town. This does not, those are both Big Ten games. So the Big Ten felt like they could suspend him. This does not include potential college football playoff games or a bowl game. So he will be back. He's also with the team. I guess I want to say it too. He just can't be there on game day. That is what he is. He went with the team. He's with the team. He just won't be at the stadium. So there's that as well. But we'll see what happens with it. It's definitely a wild case, one that we have not seen this level of spy tactics and sign stealing used in the NCAA. We have seen it in the NFL before, but we've never seen it here. It's very interesting. And yeah, man, it's just some kids playing football, and we're getting way too serious with it. So,
I mean, maybe we're not serious enough. Maybe that's the problem. Actually, everybody's not taking it seriously.
Absolutely.
But I think that wraps up. Crap! I hit my cell phone down. I know that messed up the sound earlier. Hopefully, it didn't reverberate all out just now.
That did it too, but you literally just said a thing you did, then you just did a thing that was even louder. Oh my god.
I gotta fix my mic, y'all. I think that's it for this conversation about for now, until we get an update, like you said, 3 years from now about University of Michigan, or something else crazy comes out, just like now it's found out they were stealing. I don't know.
They were stealing the team's lunches.
I don't know. Something crazy. And I was trying to think what I wanted to do for our pop culture moment.
Yes.
Yes.
I've been doing my studying, watching early 2000s music videos.
You've been watching early 2000s music videos. All right.
Just trying to prepare myself.
Okay. So if y'all don't remember, or if you didn't see our last episode, I like to quiz Taylor on pop culture at the end of our little episodes, because Taylor, for some reason, despite being about the same age as me, seems to have slept through a lot of things that we've experienced.
I just had very specific tastes when I was younger. I don't know. All right. What you got?
Okay. What I have is what everybody has been talking about. There is an artist, a hip-hop artist, who just released a brand new album. It is his first album. I mean, I don't even know in how long. And I want to see if you can guess who it is based on this clue. So he was part of a rap duo. Okay. And they did make a song on their 6th studio album that featured a band and was giving like a nod, like a cultural nod to a college band playing on a football field. That's where the football comes in. It's a very
God.
I know.
Okay, so this is one of the artists from the duo doing a solo. They had at minimum 6 studio albums, so they had to have been pretty successful.
I will also give you this hint. Okay. They were the first artist to ever go platinum.
The first artist to ever go platinum? Oh my god. Okay.
Excuse me. I don't know why I said platinum. Not platinum. Platinum is a step below. They were the first artist I believe, first hip hop artist, I think, to go diamond.
Oh.
If I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
Diamond.
I'm going to be honest. This is incredibly difficult. Because you would think someone apparently this well-known and famous, I would totally know, like, oh, that's absolutely so-and-so. And for the life of me, there's only two duos popping into my brain. And that is Casey and JoJo. That is popping into my brain. I don't believe it's them. Three, actually, no, because I just thought of the Yin Yang twins. They slipped in there as well. They were whispering in my ear. Oh, see?
Oh, look at you. Right. Look at you knowing that reference.
That's all I know. My official guess is gonna be one of the guys from Tag Team that had there it is, released a solo album. That's my guess. I don't feel super confident in it, but I'm gonna go with it.
Yeah, you were wrong. It's Andre 3000 from Outkast.
Oh my God.
Also, I may have lied. Apparently, they weren't the first to go diamond. I don't know what I looked up earlier.
That's okay. I mean, they're famous enough and popular enough to go all the way diamond. My God! Wait, what song did they have that featured a band?
So, have you ever heard of Morris Brown?
I don't know who Morris Brown is.
Okay, so Morris Brown College, is it's an HBCU, in Atlanta, very famous. It was the very first educational institution in Georgia to be owned and operated entirely by Black folks.
Okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, they did go defunct due to funding issues, and they're now being brought back.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
Private Methodist historically Black.
So yeah, that's Morris Brown. And so Outkast has a song called Morris Brown. And they, like, their whole shtick with this was that they had I think it was like the whole album where they had like a college band, and I'm going to find the name of the album. See, I should know this because I'm the one who gave you the trivia.
Yeah, how come? Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I know.
Also, that's so Andre 3000 is new music. Well, that's exciting. Is he gonna create us another song that's gonna live on forever, and you're gonna hear it every day on Pop Rocks?
So apparently, this album is super different, and he plays a flute. I have not listened to it yet.
Okay.
You know.
And for those of you looking, New Blue Sun is this? New Blue Sun is the album, so you can go listen to it now wherever you listen to the first. Hold on a minute.
Yeah, so what is song?
The first song is "I Swear I Really Wanted to Make a Rap Album." Wait, hold on.
Yeah, it's very different. Okay. It's very different.
Okay.
But yeah, the song that they had that was Morris Brown, it's named after the Morris Brown College, and it features the Morris Brown College marching. You ready for it? Wolverines!
See, if I had just brushed up on my HBCU marching band names, I would have absolutely remembered that is who that is. And
yep.
Okay, I think the ghost of Morris Brown is upset because my light over there is now blinking. I have upset Morris Brown, and I apologize to him.
That's the whole thing. So took a minute to get there because I got way down the rabbit. I forgot to make my cute little path like I did for you last time all the way to Wolverines, because I was trying to figure out what it is, what award they got.
Yeah.
Because it was something, but it wasn't platinum, it wasn't diamond. I have no idea, but I hope Outkast did get some kind of good ass award, because Outkast is an amazing hip hop duo. But
Outkast, and I don't know why I didn't think about them being a duo. I don't know why. God, that's honestly
Big Boy and Andre 3000.
A little embarrassing.
That's
on
okay.
Speaker Box Love Below, so good double album, such a good double album.
Do you know what you can do to make up for it later?
What is that?
You can shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Oh my God, I'm gonna end. I'm in control of ending this podcast, and I am absolutely going to. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for joining us for the second episode of Illegal Moves. If there is a particular topic you'd like to see us cover, throw it in the comments wherever you are listening to this, which is either YouTube or Spotify, because it's the only two places that we're going to upload it. So it better be one of those. I hope we get some more exciting comments on this one, like we did on the first episode on YouTube.
That would be so great.
That would be absolutely fantastic. So looking forward to chatting with y'all there. Liz, thank you again. I know this was really a lot of sports, of sports,
but it was very interesting.
Some very different legal stuff. So we'll be back with you next week, more like. Although I don't know, we may take off for Thanksgiving. I don't know what you do for Thanksgiving. I do nothing but watch football and then sit at home all day. So I'll probably be doing that. But we'll have another episode coming to you very soon. Liz, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Taylor.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.